Welcome to another episode of the Auto Buyer's Guide 2026 edition. Today we're going to be taking a deep and nitty-gritty dive into sales for all the auto manufacturers that we have numbers for so far, talk about their
Mhm.
lineups and what we find right and wrong with them, and why we think those sales are up and or down. Well, Travis, before we get stuck in today's main topic, let's dive into our 5-star reviews.
Yeah, it's a new year. Why not start off on a good foot? We have a 5-star review just titled Best. That's from LTK of HK. I pretty much watch every Alex on Auto's review and listen to every podcast as I get information here I don't get anywhere else. Differences in how each car model is built, how it compares with others and prior generations. The EV portions are informative, how a dual clutch works, so much more. So thank you for that, LTK. And Alex, Happy New Year, and to the viewers, Happy New Year to you as well.
Yes, Happy New Year and Happy New You, right? That's what we're all supposed to say. So what
I
was
mean,
your...
it does. It seems like I may have let myself go over the last couple days, but
Oh,
it's probably not the direction I'm heading. That's good news. I want to talk about directions real quick. I know we've got a lot of numbers to dive into. We're looking at sales numbers and how
mhm.
manufacturers did last year. But the last trip I made of the year was the first trip the first event that we got to talk about. That was Ram, and
Mm.
boy, Ram is not doing anything subtly these days, are they?
No, they are not. But before we dive into that, what's your New Year's resolution? Let's get that out there.
Oh goodness, I'm not. I gotta admit, I'm not a resolution person.
Oh,
Do better, work on this, work on that. But there's no like, here's what I'm doing in 2026.
that's
Except
supposed to be
remembering
my
that it's
line because I
2026.
I gave up giving up things. So, but
Yeah,
boring
I
people.
mean
Okay,
it's not Lent, but that's a
moving
whole different
along to
subject.
RAM then. Yes, TRX is back-ish, right? It's the
hmm
upgraded TRX, and we still got the RHO thing, and they're sticking an SRT name on it now.
Yeah, and I get it and I don't get it. I don't think it needed SRT to be considered a performance vehicle. I don't think anyone looked at the TRX and went, what is that though? Like what are we doing here? Is this supposed to be exciting? So kind of weird to throw SRT on there. Actually, I think TRX does more for SRT than SRT does for TRX. But I have to say they have a fantastic T-Rex head logo that can be found on the
Mhm,
back of the models we looked at, and I love embracing that instead of the really radical, more like splash design that they
mhm,
have on one of
mhm.
the big decals. I just go with the giant T-Rex head on the side of mine.
That's an interesting question or interesting point you raised there. I would actually argue it's the opposite because there've been far more SRTs sold than TRXs. So I think maybe it is putting a little bit of that shine on there because the Hellcat was always badged as an SRT, and it wasn't just the
Yeah.
Hellcat; it was also the 6.4 and the 6.2 before it, and the V10s, etc. Starting with the Viper, etc. So the Vipers had or SRTs rather had a good long history. We had a SRT Neon, which was all kinds of fun.
Oh
Kind
yeah,
of
but
kind of wish we
does
had a
but does
small
TRX
SRT.
but does TRX need SRT? I don't think so at all. So why
Yeah,
do it? It's a lot of letters at this point.
I don't know if it needs it, but I think that it points to a different way of Ram thinking about performance because there have been rumors that there might be a street truck version that would be kind of
Hmm.
tied in with that SRT name and some other letters other than TRX perhaps. There's always been that question. Now, Ram's kind
Right.
of put a little bit of water on that in the past by saying, well, the last time we did an SRT truck, it didn't really sell well, but I think it was also the wrong truck for the time.
I'm trying to remember, and this is just it's a crossover thing, and I'm not the only one who didn't remember when Dodge became Ram
Mhm,
necessarily.
mhm.
Was it the Dodge Ram SRT10 or was it a Ram SRT10?
Oh, it
Because
was
I can't.
definitely a Dodge Ram. Yeah.
So has Ram had SRT badging? I mean, recently I can't think of anything.
That I don't believe so. We can quickly Google the Googles here, but my
Yeah.
understanding is that 2010 was when it became just Ram trucks.
So I feel like this is trying to bring SRT into RAM, and again, almost has nothing to do with the TRX.
Mhm.
I'm not going to die on a hill there. It's not worth it. But just something I thought about is why. And
Yeah.
admittedly, while that's probably technically the most exciting news, it's not the thing I was most excited about with the trucks they showed us. two of the three were TRXs. The other is a Power Wagon that finally comes with a diesel.
Mm-hmm.
And if you love complete packaging, that is the complete package. So that would be the one
Except
that,
for the winch.
except for the winch, the factory winch, because
Mm-hmm.
anything else, like every other truck, you can go ahead and get one. So if I was
Mm-hmm.
going to drive one of those trucks home, I actually would take that Power Wagon diesel.
I have to admit I would not, because I find the Ram 2500 seats dreadfully uncomfortable.
Mm.
And and when you look at Ram sales, because we'll talk about this later, they are really not doing well in the heavy duty truck market. And I think it's logical because the engine is fantastic. And that's the only thing that's keeping them afloat in that segment right now. They should have done what they had promised, which was give us an all new heavy duty. Instead, this is actually a really old heavy duty truck that's been beautified and botoxed up the wazoo to try and make it look like the current generation half ton, which I think is really solid.
Sure.
But if you like a half ton, if you're a Ram fan, you have a Ram 1500 and you're like, hey, I want to get a 3/4 ton truck and I'm a Dodge, well, not we're Dodge anymore, but I'm a Ram
Mhm.
fan.
I'm a ram
uh,
head.
I'm a Ram head, whatever we want to call it, right? Then I would say to that person, really give the GMC or the Ford a look first, because I think either of those options is generally speaking better than the Ram in every way other than the engine. If you could,
So,
if I could
yeah,
make my own truck in that segment, it would be the Cummins jammed in a GMC with some of Ford's tech.
yeah, I no argument there, but I think it's more impactful for me in that I don't think the diesel is going to go away anytime soon. It's not when they refresh the 2500 that diesel
Mhm,
will disappear. So it's more, hey, this has entered the chat,
mhm,
versus, oh my gosh, it's revolutionary. Yeah, it probably would have been cooler for Ram even to have that updated 2500, but still, I appreciate this whole package thing,
mhm.
and actually, you know what? In 2026, what's my New Year's resolution? I actually have it's more of a question for the viewer, and I don't know how many of our podcast listeners are the same people who do watch us on YouTube, but I've got an old truck myself, and I get itchy a little bit on wanting to do things with vehicles, and that truck at least needs some paint. But if anyone is actually interested in in any sort of mini series, or any breakdown of what it is, what it's doing, what I have in plans for it, let me know, because it needs to get a little bit of work done. Unfortunately, that means some money, but I've got a truck of my own. It just doesn't see the light of day very often.
Hmm. And that kind of brings us along to our sales talk here, because we have numbers for most but not all car companies that
Hmm.
sell vehicles in the US as of the day that we're recording this episode, everybody. So January 7th, early in the morning, not everybody's reported the numbers, but most of the car companies have. And you and I were talking about this before we started recording. The thing that I get out of this is that we have never seen a new car buyer demographic like this and changing this rapidly over the last decade or so in America's history. And that is that the American buyer of new cars is richer than before. They're spending a lot more money on top end models. And I think a lot of the reason that we get so many viewer complaints about pricing and why are you focusing on this model? Why are you focusing on that model? Why is the
Hmm.
price tag so high? Is that's who's buying these cars, and it's obvious in the sales numbers. Sales of top end trims are up, sales of luxury vehicles are up, and people are just buying more and more pricey things.
I mean, you and I are some of the biggest drum bangers on please make affordable cars. We want it
Mhm,
for everyone. We want it for ourselves. We want it for the neighbor. We want it for the automotive industry. But we can't on our own change that. But we're looking at
mhm,
the numbers, and it goes, yes, some of these sales are going to be down, and you can make the argument, and somebody will, that nobody is buying less expensive cars because there are no less expensive cars, and that's a fair
mhm,
argument. People are going to have a ceiling, and if that ceiling is $25,000, there's only so many cars you can buy under that. And what if you didn't want one of those cars, right? That happens. But as
mhm,
that ceiling rises, we're not seeing any increase in sales in the lower end. That whatever that new floor is, they're falling as well by and large.
mhm,
So there's not a market for less expensive vehicles. Therefore, manufacturers won't make them, and if they make them,
mhm.
people have to buy them. Otherwise, that's the end. It's not across the board. There are some less expensive vehicles that are still doing pretty well, but we're seeing the increases come on the top end, certainly
Yeah.
not the bottom.
The one vehicle that's bucking this trend is GM's, and that would be the Trax. The Trailblazer's also done pretty well, and the small Buick things, but Trax has done especially well, I would say. This is an interesting twist though for some shoppers because it's a Chevy,
Mhm.
but it is not built in the United States, and it's not exactly the most Chevy because the design is coordinated with other global market General Motors products. But we're
Mhm.
talking GM first here because GM is the biggest car company in America still. They sold 2.85 million things last year in 2025. On this list, what struck you about GM's sales split here?
A lot. I mean, it's interesting to see how things are broken up. I think the conversation with the big three, which is now the big 74, however you want to break those things down, either way, has always been about trucks. And General Motors sells a lot of trucks. The
Oh
Ford
my,
F
yes.
150 or the F Series is the best selling pickup truck in America, but that's partially just because, or partially because, General Motors splits their trucks from Silverado and Sierra.
Hmm.
So those two exist separately, but they really are, by and large, to my mind, the same truck, right?
They
If
are. And
somebody
they
wants to
sold
make a
almost a
difference,
million of
fine.
them.
Yeah,
944,927 full-size trucks.
that is a
GM
lot
produced.
of trucks.
It's a lot of trucks. Admittedly, GM does combine light duty, heavy duty, Silverado, Sierra, and the EV variants of those all jammed together. But still, that's a lot of truck.
And honestly, the splits between them are not enormous. About 590,000 of those were Silverados. That means we're
Hmm.
just under 400,000, or that range for the Sierras. So pretty evenly split amongst those. I also have to say that when it comes to the EVs, General Motors sells a ton of them
Hmm.
compared to the rest of the U.S. market, because they have such a wide variety of them. The
They
one that
did.
surprised me is the Escalade IQ, and I guess IQL. They probably don't split those up. There were 50,000 Escalades sold, but there were 8,100 Escalade IQ sold. That actually is
Yeah.
a pretty healthy split, especially for people who are concerned that EVs are not
Hmm.
the new thing. And we'll see later on where EVs are not selling in the same volume. I
Yeah.
would argue that not only are they a little bit more expensive, but it is still a new product and a new concept. And people don't have to be against it to still not buy it. They just go,
Hmm.
I'm not so sure, or there wasn't the incentive, or I don't know what charging looks like. So still, that's impressive. That's a ton. I mean, and I'm talking
Yeah.
about metric tons of Escalade IQ.
Yeah. It's Cadillac sold 173,000 things last year. And the sales split's interesting. XT4, 5, and 6 sales are down, which is logical because they're the end of the road. Optic, Vistic, and Lyric, the three of them together, sold 40,000 units, which I think is more than I had expected, to be honest. But we'll see how that goes without the tax credit.
Yeah.
Escalade IQ, 8,100 units, so about 50,000-ish electric things. We don't have numbers on their Celestics, etc., offhand. But Buick
Not
is the
many.
interesting one, I
I'll
think.
go on record. Not many.
Yeah, Buick's an interesting one in a way because Buick is definitely back from the grave here. They sold almost 200,000 units last year, beating Acura. And that's, I think, the best Acura corollary in the American market really is
Mhm.
Buick right now, based on just the product lineup and the customer type there.
Premium versus luxury,
Yeah.
that kind of sort of weird line.
The other thing that struck me on this is when we look down at the vehicles that they've sold, we're
Mhm.
talking big, heavy, inefficient things, right? So Escalade 50,000 units, Silverado and Sierra almost a million
Million.
units there. They sold 173,000 just Tahoes and Suburbans combined, basically a quarter million full-size SUVs when you jam all the full sizes together.
Mhm.
Their full-size crossover, Traverse, Acadia, and Enclave, those that recently got redone. Why do they have
Nearly
three of
another
them?
quarter of a million.
Yeah, because they sold a quarter of a million of those three
Yeah.
together.
If it works,
So
it works, people.
and let's just say none of those are averaging over 20 miles per gallon on a yearly basis when you actually look and see
Sure.
how much gas is going down. Kind of makes me wonder, is GM ripe for another fuel affordability crisis?
Oh boy, the timing on that is interesting. I don't know what the cost of gasoline is going to be here in the United States in the next 2 months, 6 months, 1 year.
Oh, it's going to be
Um,
free because now we have
that's
Venezuela, right?
well, and Alex, way to start us off. Um, you're gonna find yourselves in a tough spot, and I think if you're General Motors, the thing that you are missing, and you have got to do something very, very, very soon, is a freaking hybrid anything. Does not
Hmm.
exist.
Hmm.
If there was a Traverse hybrid, imagine the sales numbers that that could bring
Ah,
in. Obviously, it has to be good,
they have
but
hybrids in
uh
China.
huh, right,
But you know
okay.
what you can't ship right now to the US easily?
Well, many
Stuff
things.
from China.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just one of those things where these numbers are impressive, and like I said, they're on
Hmm.
top, right?
Hmm.
And General Motors actually has less brands than some of the other model or the other makers or conglomerates here that we're going to look at. But they're doing all of this with a healthy EV portfolio, but we know right now that's not going to move the needle.
Healthy.
It's not going to. Well, you
Yeah.
know what I mean, right? A very varied palette of EV
A
options.
very broad EV portfolio with
Yes,
relatively muted sales compared to the elephant in the room.
right.
But
Which one
let's
is
talk about the
hybrid?
other elephant in the room though, because that is Toyota, the other General Motors. I
Uh-huh.
like to think of Toyota as Japan's GM because a lot of what they
Sure.
do reminds me of GM. And I know that there's a lot of pushback on that, but they've got a ton of models, but
It's a close second place
very
at
different outlook.
2.5 million.
2.5 million, yeah, sold. And nearly half of those, about 47% or so of those models were some kind of hybrid.
And that's only going to increase in 2026
Hmm.
because we have all of these models that are hybrid only for 26 that are going to have full sales years. Um,
Hmm.
and I expect more model, not necessarily more models coming, but I think everything Toyota puts forward from this point forward will have at least a hybrid option.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, it is actually kind of well, as I just said, sort of the counter to what General
Yeah.
Motors is doing right now.
Because like Hyundai Kia has a whole host of hybrid models now, and their hybrid sales are going up. But I believe I haven't been able to get good confirmation from those numbers, the sales split numbers on Hyundai and Kia directly yet. But I would be willing to bet that there are more hybrid Camrys sold than
Mhm.
all of Hyundai Kia's hybrids put together still.
Probably, and that has to speak to not just Toyota's engineering, but also how popular the Camry has
Hmm.
been and its dedication to going all hybrid. So you can factor all
Hmm.
those things in, but the numbers are the numbers.
Yeah, there are some interesting other numbers though. Let's talk about successes and failures. The Highlander lineup has just sort of exploded or maybe imploded, not in the best way, I should say, because back in 2021 they shifted 264,000 Highlanders. Highlander now has really fallen through the floor, and then even if you include Grand Highlander and Highlander together, we're only talking 192,000. Grand Highlander's outselling Highlander, by the way, as we all thought it would,
Mhm.
136,000. But GM Toyota,
Mhm. Mhm.
General Toyota
In
Company,
Japan.
went from 264,000 Highlanders down to 56,000 Highlanders in 4 years.
I don't think I have a great explanation for that, except I wonder how many of these folks have upgraded to Lexus in their next purchase as well.
I'm gonna go with none.
Okay.
Uh, I when you look at this, I think the problem that we did see with Grand Highlander, maybe this was an opportunity for other players here. I think when we look at this over the last that 5 year mark, we saw the rise of bigger competitors from the Koreans. The Koreans came in and they started
Telluride,
sucking up 100,000
Austin.
units each a year.
Mhm.
So they had to come from somewhere. They came largely at the expense of Pilot, but also at the
Mhm.
expense of Highlander. And the transition to Grand Highlander didn't go smoothly because they had a stop sale that was really quite lengthy. Grand
Mhm.
Highlander is, I think, the best Highlander. I don't know why you'd buy a Highlander, just buy the Grand Highlander. I think it looks better. It looks more like a Toyota. It's way
Mhm.
bigger on the inside, more practical. But I am surprised, though, that it's not selling like Highlander. I think maybe it might be a bit expensive.
Well, don't forget about the three we just talked about: the Traverse, the Acadia.
Hmm.
Those are also pulling in some of those same numbers, especially because
Yeah,
they're now in the same size range as the Grand
yeah.
Highlander was. Their last generation was Highlander-ish. Now this is
Hmm.
definitely Grand Highlander, and the space in there is enormous. It's not the same
Yeah,
person shopping GM to Toyota, even though there's a lot of corollaries. But I bet you some of those sales are pulling from there as well.
yeah. Toyota has a lot of small volume volume vehicles, but We got the Highlander family at 192,000, Corolla at a quarter million,
Mhm.
Camry 316,000. Interestingly, peak Camry was all the way back in 2007 with 472,000. But Camry is an interesting thought experiment here because they built 316,000 Camrys and sold them. That's about 317,000 kilowatt hours of batteries, which
Sure.
would have built theoretically about 5,500 standard range Model 3s. And this is
If they
going to
even made them still.
offend, yeah, and this is going to offend some viewers here probably. Well, there's still a standard range Model 3 or standard range plus, whatever the smallest battery pack is available. That the 58 kilowatt hour
Yeah.
battery pack is still available in the Model 3. But you could have built 5,500 Model 3s for that same volume of battery. And this is the interesting question. Taking 5,500 cars, if that person had bought a regular Camry or a regular whatever in the compact segment, taking
Mhm.
them from 30 miles per gallon to zero gasoline, or moving all 316,000 of those Camrys from a blend of hybrid and non-hybrid up to at least 45 miles per gallon,
Yeah.
likely had a bigger environmental impact because there is only one way to get your Camry, and that is hybrid between 44 and 50 something miles per gallon.
Yeah, no argument on paper. I think you're going to see, assuming you have to have some crazy outliers, but in a significant margin where the people who
Mhm.
bought that Camry drive 5 miles a day or less, or something like that, and the people who would have used these Model 3s drive 200 miles a day to really say, no, 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 trust me, the impact is there. I
Mhm.
still think the answer lies in the plug-in hybrid and what that corollary looks like. And I was just reviewing
Mhm.
a video I did on my Model 3 where I was comparing overall fuel costs. I included the Camry hybrid,
Mhm.
and I said, by the way, one thing I haven't included in this is plug-in hybrids, and it's not because I forgot them or because I have no idea what to do with them, but we don't have good information. I think that if you put a even 10 to 15 mile range in a plug-in hybrid, that's probably better use of that battery
Mhm.
if you're trying to make that impact. And
Yes.
Toyota's proved you can make those a little bit more
Mhm.
interesting. They can be the more powerful, more
Mhm.
exciting versions. So no argument there. I still think it was a Toyota cop out when they go, no, 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 hybrid's the answer. Pure
Mhm.
EV. I think that was business, not personal belief on the large scale. But there's no
Mhm.
argument that they're making an impact.
I think it's a bit of both in a way because the environmental impact of 316,000 Camrys and nearly 500,000 hybrid RAV4s basically are going to be sold because now RAV4 is all hybrid. That transition's happening basically now because they're getting rid of all the old RAV4s. But next year, RAV4 sales have not slowed down in the height of this transition, and
No.
neither did Camry. Camry's sales did not slow down when they went all hybrid. So next year, we're going to see 750,000 things getting over 40 miles per gallon suddenly in the Toyota lineup. That's a massive
Hmm.
decrease in the fuel consumption of these new vehicles versus 5 years ago vehicles.
Yeah.
The sort of problem in a way with plug-in hybrids would be the eternal question of do you plug them in? The lower the range, the less likely I think people are to plug them in. But then
That's
there's the
fair.
cost factoring into this as well. They are definitely going to be pricier and harder for manufacturers to justify financially. The other
Hmm.
thing I would say is with Toyota being Toyota, their electrification and their move to full EVs would never have been exciting. Toyota's not that kind of
No,
car company.
no,
So
absolutely not.
like
Yeah.
could Toyota have poured the money into creating another Tesla? Absolutely. They've got
Oh,
$100 billion, sorry, in the bank. I mean, they've got
they could smack
cash
Tesla
coming.
silly if they
Right.
wanted.
They've got cash coming out of the wazoo. They could absolutely blow 50, 60 billion dollars and still have billions of dollars left over, tens of billions of dollars left over
For a
to
pizza party.
create a Model Y competitor and a Model Y competitive charging network, etc. But
The
Toyota would never do
RAV400.
that. Toyota would always have given us a BZ because
Yeah.
Toyota's a very conservative engineering company and Tesla is not.
Right.
So Toyota would always have preferred a longer lifetime and serviceability on parts and batteries and this and that. And they always would have opted for a relatively slow and boring thing
Mhm.
compared against what we see from the others. And the GM corollary is there because that's exactly what we see in Ultium. All we would
Yeah,
have seen on a larger scale from Toyota in their electrification would
or
have
styling.
been Toyotium, right?
Yeah,
It would just be their version of that thing. And so for the viewers out that are like, but Toyota should have done it. Like, should they have? Because it wouldn't have
Toyota was
sold.
never going to do it. Lexus
Well,
could have done it, right? But
Toyota could have done it
something more.
because if the U.S. had required it, if California's emissions regulations and the EPA had really required it, and
Mhm.
Europe had really pushed harder on them, Toyota would have done it. That there's no question. I think that Toyota would have done it. It's just that it wouldn't have been any more exciting than the Toyota EVs that we already get, and in the U.S. at least, for specifically, it probably actually still would have had less of an impact than Toyota bringing half their lineup into full hybridization.
Especially as a mainstream car brand, right? If you talk
Yes.
about more of a luxury car brand
Mhm.
where you can kind of get away with more. You can be more
Mhm.
adventurous. It can cost
Mhm.
more as long as it feels good. Whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, Toyota does need to be careful with it. I think they could have done it more under the Lexus banner.
Mhm.
But I also, I appreciate they didn't have to make the BZ better, but they did,
Mhm.
right? Not only just by changing the name, but they also have made it better. But they've also done it in partnership, and now they have a small family of EVs there. So I'm not mad about where they're at. I would love to see more
Mhm.
universally plug-in hybrids, and they do sell
Mhm.
quite a few plug-in hybrids, especially in that RAV4. Obviously, the
Yeah.
Prius Prime or the Prius plug-in hybrid, Prime is gone, is also great, but that's just not selling in the numbers that it could.
Yeah, the customer has to be interested in spending the extra $7,000 to $10,000 on the plug-in hybrid. That's the
Yeah,
question. Now, for people that think I'm giving Toyota a pass, let me just say here that their truck lineup's fuel efficiency is really bad, and it has not improved dramatically over time. Even the
and, it,
addition of hybrids is not a fantastic thing for Toyota.
and
The
it's not even as
4Runner
good as it says it will be.
no, the 4Runner hybrid is not a terribly efficient hybrid. The Land Cruiser hybrid not terribly efficient. Ditto on the GX hybrid and the LX hybrid and the Tundra hybrid, etc. So they've got a lot of work to do, and I would love to see Toyota have some sort of honest transition plan where they say, okay, we're going to hybridize the entire lineup, and here's our plan, because they're dramatically on the way for that, mind you. So in
Mhm.
2026, yeah, it would be logical if over half their volume was hybrid, since all Rav4s will be.
Yeah.
But if they had said, 2026 is this goal, by 2030 we expect the entire lineup to be hybrid, and then we're going to start rolling in the plug-in hybrids, and then by this date it's going to be this percentage of hybrids and plug-in hybrids and EVs and zero emissions whatever's, that would be interesting. And so that's, I think, the missing part with them. But we should go on to Lexus, because Lexus is a definite tale of car sales down, SUV sales up.
Well, and I think I think that's fine because Lexus is
Hmm.
jumping on the everyone's going to crossovers and SUVs, and you just listed through. We've got a lineup. You've got the
Hmm.
UX, NX, RX, LX, TX, GX. What else are we missing? That's where all the sedan sales went.
Hmm. Hmm. It's interesting. They sold just 63,000 sedans in 2025 versus BMW's sedan sales of 163. So it's a pretty big gulf. The interesting thing, though, is that Lexus now has the best-selling three-row SUV in the Lexus TX, beating the Acura MDX by actually a decent margin.
And it's a bit of a shame because the MDX is great to drive, but people are looking for practicality,
Hmm.
and the TX has that in spades. It also has a
Hmm.
bunch of different engine options. So if you want a powerful TX, it exists. If you want a less expensive TX, that exists. If you're looking for an efficient TX, that
Hmm.
exists. So it was always bound to do very well, just
Yeah.
like we said with the Grand Highlander.
I have to
And
admit, none of
yeah,
those engine options is as good as the MDX Type
I'm
S.
not saying it is,
But the
but how much?
yeah,
But on
MDX
paper,
is the
on
third
paper,
row. The third row is the problem. It has
yeah,
MDX has two big problems, and those are the two seats back there in that third row, for
yeah.
sure. That takes us along to Honda, who squeaked out 1.4 million sales in 2024, but that was still well below Honda's 2017 sales numbers. What do you think is going on at Honda? Disclosure here before we continue: Honda blames some of their sales on a chip shortage where they thought earlier in the year that that might have had a up to 100,000 unit impact. They did not say anything about that chip shortage in their 2025 sales wrap up, though. It may or may not have had much of an impact overall by the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, they're still coming in, whatever, 35% less, something like that, than Toyota sales. They always were going to, but
Mhm.
their sales are down. Why is that happening? Well, part of it is probably going to be in the car segment because Honda makes some good cars. They're fun to drive. They're interesting. They're getting a little bit pricey, and they
Mhm.
don't have things like the fit like they used to. The HRV is getting a little bit long in the tooth, all things considered.
Mhm.
But they don't have as much pop or as much variety as I think
Yeah.
you find over in Toyota. Not that they don't have anything interesting, but they're missing out.
Yeah.
It's a good hybrid system, and you can get it in their mainline vehicles. Appreciate that, but you don't get any hybrids in the higher end trims. So no, or
Coming
higher end
soon.
vehicles.
Coming soon,
Well,
hopefully.
they say no pilots, no passports, no
Mhm.
Ridgelines, which obviously is not the sales leader there. No Odyssey hybrid.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's not going to help anything.
I think Honda's sales tale is also a tale of a lack of SUVs because they don't have anything big to compete with Grand Highlander or
Yeah.
Palisade or Telluride. I know some people want to put Pilot in that category. It is absolutely not size-wise in that category. It is definitely smaller on the inside. Real world legroom is significantly below the big boys in that segment, and they don't have
Bigger
any
than
body.
Highlander, smaller than Grand Highlander.
Yeah, but they don't have any body on frame SUVs to compete with some of these faster growing segments in the US. If we look at the numbers, back in 2017, when Honda hit their peak in the US, they sold 322,000 Accords back then.
Hmm.
It's a 30% drop versus 2021, mind you. So they still dropped a lot. So they were selling so many Accords in 2000. 2025, they sold just 150,000 Accords. So when we look at their sales trajectories since 2000 over the last 25 years, we've seen
Yeah.
an astronomical drop in sedan sales. It's not Honda's fault. Americans just moving away from them. But
Yeah.
Civic also, they fell from 377,000 Civics in 2015 down to just 238 in 2025, even though we have the hybrids and the hatchbacks and the Rs and everything else in the lineup now.
And the SIs. I mean, you got manuals
Hmm.
and hybrids and well, you're not
Yeah,
coupes. Prelude's kind of the coupe, but that hasn't hit yet. It's a car thing, right? And like I said,
yeah.
Honda still has good cars. The Fit sold in big numbers. It's been
Hmm.
gone for a while. It's not like I've forgotten
Yeah.
that,
Honda's
but
really
still,
left behind that affordable market. The Civic
yeah.
is relatively inexpensive, but they don't have a Trax competitor. They
It
don't have
can
that.
be, right? It
Right.
can be, but
Yeah.
then you're getting the base Civic. There's not a well-equipped, inexpensive
Right.
model.
And
You can't find
even
a
the
place
base
like
Civic
that.
is not inexpensive anymore. It's a premium entry level option for that segment when you look at its price tag.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is the truck sales are solidly up since 2017 from 734,000 to 908,000, but they are not compensating for that lack of SUV sales. I think it's the lack of those bigger options somehow there in the lineup.
Or even the
Acura
weird
though,
in-betweens, right? So
yeah.
and Toyota is not the perfect corollary, but if you look at the well, I was gonna say the CHR, but that's now its own thing. If you look at the Corolla Cross, and which is a better value than you get in the HRV. Then you
Mhm.
look at the
Mhm.
RAV4, which is on at least on paper a very good balance against. Then you can go Forerunner, or you can go Highlander, or you can go Land Cruiser, or you can, the
Yeah.
tree just blossoms. Honda
Mhm.
goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and it makes
Mhm.
sense. But it'd be really fun and cool, and we're not going to see it, and that's okay. An Element, like throw an
Yeah.
Element in there and say, here's your adventure vehicle, and it's not built to compete with the Rav4, but it's a CRV-ified Passport,
Mhm.
something of that sort. They also don't have the Crown or the Crown Signia, which again fall
Yeah,
into this
but,
bigger tree.
Toyota sells none of those in the US, so it's okay.
Well, that's a shame.
Sales numbers are so minuscule. No one cares about
And
that
the
market.
Ridgeline is not a
Yeah.
competitor in sales to
Yeah.
something like the Tacoma or
Mhm.
even the Tundra. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
I mean, it's the CRV sells well. It probably would sell better if it was boxier and more rugged looking because Passport is exploding. That's a
Mhm.
fantastic addition. I could see a Grand Passport being a three-row alternative to Telluride and Palisade with
Mm.
that boxiness and a huge interior. That would probably sell really well for them. The sad and interesting thing here really is Acura. I was shocked by this. Did you know that 10% of Acuras sold in 2025 were made by General Motors?
And you don't get that in 2026 because those made
Yeah.
by General Motors are gone.
And
That's
even
a big
including that,
number. That's a big
yeah,
number,
and even
which
including that,
yeah.
their sales were down over last year, down to 133,000 this year, so definitely on the shrinking side, and MDX accounts for a big portion of that still, but MDX sales fell 17% and RDX a whopping 26%.
Yeah, I think RDX again, it's not the only thing, but hybrids, hybrids,
Mhm,
hybrids, hybrids.
mhm,
You look at Toyota as their main competitor, and they have hybrids. They have performance models,
mhm,
even F Sports, right? Where's your Type S
yeah,
RDX? One thing I was hoping for Acura was that the ADX would do well, and I think by and large it's done okay. I think it's a really good
mhm,
entry level luxury offering. It's got enough of the stuff to feel good. A Lexus UX is not the oh my gosh, I'm in a Lexus. The ADX feels like it's pretty close to what you'd expect from the rest of the Acura lineup.
mhm,
But again, no performance. I'll air quote it, right? But no
yeah,
performance version, no real sports
right.
version, and no hybrids.
I'm wondering if it's really just a lack of luxury and lack of expensive options in a way, because we do see the more expensive options selling well. TX is selling well, and it averages higher than MDX. XC90 is the interesting twist because it transacts significantly higher than MDX, and it looks like we don't have final sales numbers for Volvo in the US for this year, mind you, but it looks like Volvo will sell more three-row luxury SUVs than Acura in the United States in 2025, most likely. And globally, it's an absolute slam dunk for Volvo. Globally, XC90 alone, his over 100,000 units.
Yeah,
And MDX is technically a global vehicle as well, but Acura doesn't have that global reach like Volvo does.
right.
It is an interesting twist there.
I have one quick proposal to flip this thing around. If we say Lexus is on the right track and they don't really need to change what they're doing, not just by the sales numbers, but things are going well there. What if Acura went sort of like the mini model, where
Mhm,
it was hey, we are bringing personality into this. So even if there were some
mhm,
shortfalls here or there, the ADX had some wild color and wheel options, and Acura's commercials went
mhm.
boom. Here we are. Who are
Yeah,
you? You're Acura. Whatever it is. Like, is
yeah.
that an option to really spice things back up?
In my personal opinion, I think that Acura would need to do a wholesale renovation of their interior style and their interior philosophy in a way, and bump the price tag up by 10 grand across the lineup to probably
Mm,
get better sales numbers. I think they would need their interiors to be Volvo, BMW, Audi level interiors, materials, fit and finish, etc. Acura's only recently embraced real wood trim, for instance.
mhm.
They've only recently embraced slightly larger screens, touch screens, etc. They would need to, I think, more wholeheartedly embrace those things, and then they, I think, probably would sell better. Just look at Buick. Buick has embraced some of those things, and they're selling significantly more than Acura. Yeah, but we must move on because we're running out of time here in our episode, and we have a lot to go through. So Ford,
I know.
we skipped Ford there rather than doing these in order because of Toyota and Honda, synergies. So
Right.
Ford, best sales year since 2019, 2.2 million.
Congratulations, Ford.
This is another tale of the truck and the fuel economy problem. They sold, let's go through them, 829,000 F Series, 161,000 Transit vans. That's mind blowing.
Hmm.
70,000 Rangers, 146,000 Broncos. Still didn't manage to beat Wrangler though.
No.
134,000 Bronco Sports, 222,000 Explorers, beating
Hmm.
Toyota at the three-row thing, and none of those is overly efficient. We have Maverick though at 155,000 units, which is really saying something about America's desire for a small truck.
Yeah, I think that's like the big home run out of this whole thing is the Maverick. And I drove past a Ford dealer the other day, and I saw rows and rows of tiny truck beds. It was cute and hilarious. But you know
Hmm.
what I have seen is Mavericks with oh gosh, industrial canopies. I'm just thinking,
Hmm.
workmen's canopies on the back. So I think there's one company who makes them right now because I've seen the same one the whole time. And people and their companies, not necessarily fleets, right, but smaller companies or individual
Yeah.
contractors are saying, "Hey, this fuel economy is crazy.
Hmm.
Two wheel drive, all
Hmm.
wheel drive, whatever they're looking for." They say, "How can I make the most out of this truck?"
Yeah.
And it shows.
There's an electrical company in the same business park that bought a whole ton of Maverick hybrids for that same reason. This is
Hmm.
the sort of the interesting twist here, I think, is that Ford has had ups and downs, but I think this year's sales prove that Ford's made a lot of good progress with actually a relatively small number of models, really focusing on those small number of models and making them what people want. Because we've got Escape sailing off into the sunset. Sales were okay, but I don't think that's exactly what the shopper was after. Bronco Sport, though, 134,000 Bronco Sports. That is the thing that Jeep and GM are both missing, and they're letting out on that cute, boxy,
Right.
practical segment. Maverick, obviously, 155,000 of those. Bronco itself, I think, is doing pretty well, especially given the new competition that we have in this segment with a new Forerunner, a Land Cruiser that's doing well, etc. Lincoln, I'm kind of surprised here. Lincoln sales numbers are not great, and they're primarily a Navigator company, right? They're sort of defined by Navigator, but even
Yeah.
Navigator's only about a quarter of their sales. They're almost a four-way split between Corsair, Nautilus, Navigator, and Aviator. Corsair's ending production soon, and Nautilus is built in China, so it's a bit of a problem.
And that's sort of where Ford is falling away from GM right now. Is that
Hmm.
if you look at Lincoln versus Cadillac, Cadillac has a lot more momentum or a firmer stance in where they're at and where they're going and what they can do with it. I'm not saying here's the answer, but
Hmm.
we've talked about it before. Why is there not a Lincoln Mach E?
Yeah,
The Mustang Mach E did pretty well for Ford. It has done still. They
yeah.
discontinued the Lightning, but it sold just about twice as many Mach E's. Put something like that
And
in the
outsold
Lincoln
the real
lineup.
Mustang too. It's like
Right,
more
right.
Mach-E's go out. If as a company you're interested in investing in Mustang, then you should also be investing in that Mach-E thing.
Yeah, so
But
so put that into the Lincoln lineup. That
yeah,
if you're not going to do that, then what are we doing?
but we must now move on to the hot mess that is Stellantis, and I promise we have to go quicker here. So basically, we have Gladiator selling well. Wrangler was up 11%. The Wagoneer Grand Wagoneer thing seems to be leveling out and showing some
Mhm,
positive trends towards the end of the year. Ram has pulled out the nosedive, but the aging heavy duty lineup is down 9%, as we talked about earlier.
mhm.
Chrysler's all minivan lineup is selling minivans. The weird
Working.
part, the weird part here in the lineup, their really odd lineup is that Durango sales are up 34%. It's the best year for Durango in 20 years
I don't like that.
for some of the oldest things on the market.
I
Fiat and Alpha, less said about them, the better. And I want to know who on earth were the six people that bought a Dodge Dart in 2025, since it's been discontinued for forever, or the 17 people that bought and registered a brand new Dodge Journey that's been discontinued for 5 years. Where were they hiding? Wrong
Where did you
answers
find
only.
them?
Yeah,
Who's
wrong answers only. Where were they hiding?
uh God, were those vehicles that got dropped off at the port? They ran out of space. They got tucked in a corner, and everyone forgot where they were at. I mean, what are we talking about here?
Oh, I was going single wide tinfoil hat club. They thought the world
Uh-huh.
was going to end, so they've been living in a bunker for 5 years, and they needed
Okay.
a new car because they realized the world hadn't ended, and the Dodge dealer was the closest thing, and there was a journey there.
Okay,
Because
they,
also
they were
inflation.
yeah. I mean, they were set aside to be brought in as part of the president's new armored fleet, and
Yeah.
things got a little bit rocky. It didn't quite happen that way,
They
and
wanted they wanted a Durango when they went into the bunker 5 years ago. So they put away some Durango money under the mattress and they
yeah.
pop back out. The Dodge dealer's the closest dealer. When they get there with their cash in their cash bags, their Piggly Wiggly bags, all it would buy them is a 5-year-old new Journey. That's my thought there.
I've been looking at cars, and I saw some new 2024s, and I went, oh boy,
Mhm,
that
mhm.
doesn't hold a candle to this.
Rationally speaking, though, I would say for the Stellantis haters, they seem to be pulling themselves up here. Basically,
Yeah.
Jeep sales are more or less stabilizing. The lowered prices and resurrections of different things have come back for them. It's about what you'd expect. We have the new Cherokee coming online soon. There's a
Hmm.
lot riding on that, so I think it's a year of let's see, because we have new Cherokee coming out. We have the updated Grand Cherokee coming out. Those sales numbers are not there. We have the Recon, which is not going to do anything for their sales, but could
No.
be some sort of interesting halo thing there.
Yep.
Fiat and Alpha, God knows what's going on with them.
Still
But
here.
yeah, still here.
Still here.
Rams light duty sales are probably ticking up. Heavy
Yep.
duty sales probably still going to be down next year, depending on what
Yep.
happens with the engine lineup. Let's
But
move on to
but you did say that there's new life coming. There's talk
new
of a
life.
Ram SUV. There's the
Hmm.
size Dakota is making its return
Yeah,
at
there'll
some
be a
point.
new Durango. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's probably going to be a Chrysler sedan, maybe something like that. Charger,
Okay.
Challenger,
Okay.
the Charger sales. We'll see how they go with the inline six, etc. There's
Yeah.
a lot writing and a lot of question marks, but we do know that undoubtedly the correction in trajectory to bring their sales up has caused a profitability decline because they were a massively profitable company in
Yes.
24. 25, they're pretty much just average.
It
Moving
happens.
on, though, not going in the same trajectory is the Hyundai Kia rocket ship that has managed to
Mhm.
shift 1.75 million things in America last year.
Right.
901,000 on the Hyundai side, 852 on the Kia side. I'm surprised actually how close those two brands are in sales. So
So
let's go down the sales numbers here, and then after this, I will let's breathe for a commentary. So K4 and Elantra, neck and neck, 140,000 approximately each. K5 and Sonata. K5 selling better than Sonata, so apparently no hybrid and no N line, not a problem. Seltos and Kona. Kona's outselling Seltos, which I think is interesting because Seltos is better looking to me. Sportage and Tucson, no contest. Tucson is leading the pack there. I think the Sportage is a little fugly. Well, was until they rebooted it here. Telluride and Palisade, these are neck and neck, almost identical. Hyundai finally caught up with the prettier Palisade. Basically,
Mhm.
they each match Pilot. So doubling what Pilot sells, actually
Yeah.
beating Toyota as well in that combined thing. Sorento Santa Fe, 142,000 on Santa Fe versus 95 on Sorento. So Boxy's better. Carnival,
Mhm.
72,000 units apparently are showing that hybrid was a good idea. Nero stands alone at 31,000 fuel sippers. And the combined entity sold 124,000 EVs, which is actually pretty impressive and beats just
Mhm.
about everybody else.
Yeah, their spread on EVs isn't as large, but it does seem more focused, right?
Mhm, mhm,
If you compare again, especially by the numbers, they come out ahead in acceleration, in charging, in range, and efficiency. They feel more modern than
mhm,
some of like the General Motors EVs do. But what the most exciting thing here, Sorrento and Santa Fe, is I like these little three rows, the two and
mhm,
a half rows, whatever you want to call them. They're doing well, and
mhm,
so they're capitalizing where they're taking off where Highlander left. And yes, Grand Highlander in the U.S. is going to sell better, and you look at things like the Traverse and the Acadia and the Enclave. Those are all big. These are on the
mhm.
smaller side, so I love to see it. And what they're doing so well is turbocharged engines across the lineup, mostly turbos, hybrids, plug-in hybrids. They are up on the tech side of things, the
Yeah, it's like
powertrain tech.
yeah, it's like you can see Kia's definitely focused on that Telluride because 123,000 units versus Sorento, which is a lot less expensive at
Mhm.
95,000. So there's money in them, their hills. I also think that they've also done a good job ditching the Me Too styling. Because let's all be honest, 15, 20 years ago, Hyundais and Kias were boring, bland, copy Me Too things. They sold on the promise of reliability, the long warranty, and cheap sticker prices. But now they've come into their own, and whether you like the styling or not, I don't think that the Sportage is the most attractive entry in its segment, but it certainly doesn't look Me Too. It does
Mhm.
seem to be doing really well for them.
Yeah, and all of that leads into Genesis, who we don't
Mhm.
have full numbers yet, but has done fairly well. I mean, they've outsold some of the other luxury, premium offerings over some of
Yeah.
these other manufacturers.
We don't know the
Um,
breakdown, but we know the year-end number of 82,331, which is more than Infiniti. It's their best sales year ever and pretty close to Lincoln.
and they still sell some cars.
Mhm. It's interesting. They're very focused on the GV70. So the GV70 and GV80 account for a large portion of their sales. GV70 is the lion's share. So they're definitely
Mhm.
kind of really riding on that one model for Genesis. The interesting thing I think here is that when you look at this whole thing together, we're looking at, almost 300,000 compact sedans being sold somewhere around you. What does this look like? 120, 100 something thousand full size, or well, full size air quotes, mid size
Mm.
sedans in K5 and Sonata.
Big size instead of full
Yeah,
size.
but on the compact side, that's a really good showing because that's more compact sedans being sold than a lot of other car companies, coming in really close to Civic. Actually, Civic's 238, so actually Hyundai Kia sold more, really. And the hatchback is just barely coming online. But the interesting thing here is that they did this without a hybrid in the Kia lineup.
Yes, but they have some of the more affordable options. I think that's where things are getting ahead. So
Hmm.
it's not the bargain basement value. It's, hey, this is fun, this is
Hmm.
interesting. And one of the things that you and I have both said about something like the K4 is that it's a good looker and it's got nice
That's
tech. And
decent
where
looking.
it falls in the driving experience,
Hmm.
but
That's
people
the
aren't
thing, though.
necessarily putting on all the miles. They go, "Oh,
Right.
here's a nice car."
But that's kind of the point that I'm making here is that they've managed to shift 250,000 approximately of these things.
Mhm.
But actually, sorry, more almost 300,000 of these things, but they've done it without an exciting turbo option. Yeah, there's an
Yeah.
Elantra N, but I mean, no one buys it. And there's no Elantra NK4. There's no mid-level turbo fun one. There's no hybrid K4. The hybrid Elantra is a boring fuel sipper. Other than the Elantra N, they're not overly exciting to drive. They're good for their segment. They handle
Yeah.
nicely for what they are, etc. But they're not a Civic Si either. But they've
No.
proved that you don't need that, interestingly, to actually shift some units.
No, you just need to have an interesting car. It doesn't have to be the best driver, which is
Mhm,
sort of a shame. I mean, admittedly, I'm like, "Ugh, I don't love that," but it works,
mhm.
and that's how you get some affordability.
Yep. Moving on to Nissan, they managed to shift a few more cars than in 2024, but it's looking bleak there. I am
Yeah.
especially sad that Versa, which is sailing off into the sunset, is not going to have as big of an impact on their sales as it used to have if they'd canceled it, because they only sold 51,000 last year, and they used to sell nearly a quarter million.
Right.
Sentra, apparently the 152,000, so reasonable sales there for a single model.
Mhm.
Altima apparently has been recontinued for 2026,
Okay.
93,000 there. Kicks is their new big seller, 100,000 units there. Pathfinder's up a little bit, Frontier's down, Armada's kind of up a little bit, but not selling many. Rogue 217,000, so definitely below CRV, where it used to be neck and neck with CRV up there.
Yeah.
Aria's dead. Infinity all in only sold 53,000 things, and apparently 3/5 of that was a QX60.
Yeah, the QX60 part of there is not surprising. I mean, even the Pathfinder sales being up is a little bit strange because the Pathfinder is in itself getting pretty old. Nissan has plans. I think they are working on it. If nothing else, it was, hey, stop the bleeding,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like they've done that in the grand scheme. And now it's, here's where we're going to be careful. The Rogue is their next big thing. They've got that
Mm-hmm.
hybrid coming for 2027 model year, so we should see that sometime in 26, I suspect. But they're also trying to bring back excitement to Infinity. They've talked about a sports sedan coming that may even include a manual transmission. Not going to move a ton of units, but might draw some interest and have
Mm-hmm.
people taking a look. You put that
Yeah.
with a Red Bull livery on it in some sort of fashion, and that's going to draw some things.
Let's
But
just say it's not going to put butts in the seats, though. That's the problem.
no, but like I said, we look at the Versa, one of the least expensive cars you can buy in the United States. People aren't buying
Hmm.
it.
Yep, I'm sad. Well, they're also not bringing as many as they used to and having the fire sales they used to. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
Yeah, yeah. But the
Let's move
Sentra, good,
along.
good for the Sentra. I will say
Yeah.
that.
We'll scoot along through Subaru here at 650,000 approximately, and Mazda at 410,000 approximately. They're both down about 3% for different
Yeah.
reasons, but Subaru essentially says that they cut production of less expensive and less profitable models, so they've really killed a lot of base trims. Also, they had some retooling for Forester and Outback because Forester moved production to Indiana for
Mhm.
2026. The Wilderness model was delayed. Then we have an all-new Outback. Crosstrek, Forester, and Outback are by far the biggest Subarus on sale. They account for the vast majority of that sales there. Mazda is another interesting one. They really slashed CX-30 imports because of tariffs. They're coming from Mexico, and they
Yeah.
were really throwing the tariff line under the bus there. The CX line is 372,000 out of that 410,000 vehicles. So Mazda 3 sales are really, really
All the
down.
SUVs. Yeah.
Yeah, and CX-5, this is going to be a very important product for them in 2026 because it is one third of all Mazdas sold in the US, and
Yeah.
CX-50 is one fourth of all Mazdas sold. So those two models are, basically half of everything that they sell here.
Between Mazda and Subaru, what they're missing is big impacts in the 3-row segments. That's what
Hmm.
they're really missing. That's where it
Yeah.
starts to fall behind.
CX-90 is doing okay for Mazda, but not selling an enormous amount. And Ascent has kind of always stunk up the place.
Yeah.
Moving along, we have Volkswagen and Audi. Talk about stinking it up. Volkswagen sales down 13%, Audi down 16%. The eternal
Man.
struggle with the Germans, the problematic German brand. VW, SUV and sales, car sales were down. Buzz was up, but 6,000 units.
And now
ID4
on pause.
yeah, ID4 up at 22,000. That's not going to last because of the tariff situation here and the taxes.
Right.
Everything else is down. Atlas down 6%, Cross Sport down 19%, Taos down 14%, Tiguan down 17%, Jetta down 25%, and GTI down a whopping 35%. Obviously, tariffs are an impact here, but
Mhm.
I honestly fail to understand VW's perpetual problem because I think all those are fine. I like the Taos, I like the Tiguan, I like the Atlas, the Cross Sport, GTI is fun, GLI is fun. I
I mean,
just
they just put a bunch of money
sad.
into the Tiguan, so I think that
Yeah.
can bode well. It just takes time to kind of make that impact. The Atlas is getting a little bit aged, but they're not doing anything bad. It's
Let's yeah.
so why are we falling behind?
Let's reach out to the viewer here. If you have looked at an Audi or a Volkswagen recently and you decided not to get one, reach out to us, send us a voice memo, hey at autobuyersguide.com, or on the regular old jingle phone, 669-842-1947, and tell us why you didn't buy that specific Volkswagen or Audi. Because Mercedes,
Yeah,
they
I'll have a video soon on the Atlas, and I literally asked the same
yeah.
question: if you didn't buy an Atlas, why not? Or if you did buy an Atlas, what put it? Because I'm left with the same question. I'm sitting in
Yeah,
it going,
we must hear from you.
okay,
Let us know.
yeah, we need to know.
Yeah, BMW and Mercedes did not have this same problem. Mind you, Mercedes has not released their full 2025 numbers as of the date we are recording this, so there may be some adjustments to these, but we'll start with BMW. BMW beat Mercedes in the US sales game, and they did it without a cargo van.
Hmm.
The tail here is the same as some of the others. Car sales down 13%, SUV sales up 4.5%. But the interesting thing is here, the sales are up on expensive models, of course, and down, of course, in the BEV side of things. BEV sales were down to 42,000. Still a pretty healthy number, though. BMW shifted a decent number.
Yeah,
PHEV sales are up to 25,000. Even though they make some really good plug-in hybrids, you can see there wasn't the sales momentum they had there
but expensive.
before. 65% of BMW's volume was an SUV.
Yeah, not surprising. The good news, Mini is also up by about
A-
9%.
And what helped their car volume is that BMW considers X1 and X2 both cars, and those sell well. So X1
Sure.
and X2 cars,
Cars. Hmm.
quote unquote.
Oh, are they
Um,
hatchbacks now?
I think it's a light truck versus hatchback classification with
Hmm.
the EPA
Hmm.
issue there. Maybe that's
Sure.
why they stick them in there. But basically, riding high on X3, X5, X7 because they're all doing really well. Mercedes is an interesting tale here because what we were saying earlier that the new car buyer demographic is really shifting in the United States and it's becoming ever more affluent, ever smaller. People are buying multiple cars a year on a more frequent basis than they ever had in the past. When you look at, S&P Global Sales Mobility numbers where they're talking about the multi-car buyer households, we're talking, I mean, not huge numbers, but but still a surprising number of people that are buying 2, 3, 4 new cars a year. Absolute
Mhm.
bonkers stuff. And they're buying really expensive things. AMG and Maybach sales have been up by something 60, 70% over the last few years. And we're expecting 2025 to come in with double-digit sales increases on those sub-brands, AMG and Maybach. And those MSRP transactions are absolutely staggering up there.
No sales
Mercedes,
there. Yeah.
yeah. Mercedes has always had some expensive things, and we talk about that every time we compare them here, where, we got the BMW and the Audi in this little category, and their price tags are high, but then you need like a paper bag to, hyperventilate in when you look at the top ends of Mercedes
There will be
lineup.
an overlap, but
Yeah,
it's just
it's just way
you
off the
notice how
edge.
my hand's off screen, Alex? It's
Yeah.
because it just keeps going.
Right. Oh, you want adaptive cruise control? That's extra. Heated steering wheel? That's extra. Rear airbags? That's extra, etc.
We got it. Don't
Yeah.
worry.
The world is your oyster, but it's all
Mhm.
it's all cha-ching here. And Porsche sales, of course, have done really well historically over the last few years. I don't have numbers for them for 2025 yet. They may be down, is my guess, for 2025, but on a very strong upward trend over the last few decades because of the
Mhm.
SUVs and ever more expensive models.
Yeah. No, I think this is what we're talking about. And I know that, 60% increase in some of these high-end luxury brands, the actual numbers are not going to be big, but it does still speak to a trend.
Hmm.
And that trend is not the average consumer friendly, or what you think of the average consumer really isn't. If I think I'm the average consumer, but then I look at the numbers, I go, oh, just kidding. I am not. Nobody's looking at me when they say, what are
Hmm.
we doing for our product planning?
Hmm. And I mean, just G Wagon, for instance, there was a time where Mercedes was going to cancel G. In fact, it was
Mhm.
ostensibly replaced by GL, now the GLS. But GLS was up 6% last year. G Wagon was up 12% last year. And by all appearances, we're going to see pretty similar increases in both of those for 2025 because Mercedes does have Q3 2025 numbers out, and the numbers were pretty rosy.
Yeah, good for them. Congratulations. Nice work. Boy, wouldn't it be nice to see some of that trickle down? But we know how
Mhm.
trickle down usually ends up working.
Yes. What's what I think is kind of interesting too is that this definite explosive growth in the luxury brands. I mean, Mercedes 374,000, BMW 389,000. I mean, even Audi at 165, and then you take a look at Lexus and Acura and Cadillac, etc. We're talking an ever growing number of expensive high-end models trickling down into the used market after 3 and 4 years than ever before.
Yeah, and the question there, and what manufacturers have figured out, is how do we capitalize on that? And
Mhm.
that's where all these subscriptions come in.
Subscriptions for sure, and then, of course, repair costs, because I think that's the one thing that a lot of people are forgetting in this, is that
Luxury
used
use
luxury
value is
car.
upfront, not
Yeah,
long term.
but that used luxury car, even a Lexus or an Acura, is gonna cost you more long term than spending that same amount of cash on a brand new Camry.
Even just the insurance costs, which,
Mhm. Could be,
not
yeah.
everyone is thinking about insurance costs, but it's the repairability, or, covering that car for a total loss, those sorts of things is going to cost the insurance company more because the MSRP was more. It's not the end all be all, but it pretty much tells you what's going on underneath, and what's going to cost to repair means higher insurance rates.
And that brings us along to Tesla, the brand that we haven't talked about yet. We don't have full breakdowns seemingly as of the recording of this video, but we do know that they did 1.64 million global sales, a 9% drop from 2024. And it looks like in the US, we're going to be seeing some sales drops as well, some actually pretty staggeringly ugly sales drops.
I mean, because Tesla competes in one segment, electric, globally, there are so many more electric models available.
Hmm.
There's probably some political impact there, but maybe not the number shifting that some folks would like it to be. If you look at all the R&D, though, it went into this thing called the Cybertruck, which, as we know, has done super well, and
Hmm.
everyone loves it, and really rosy outlook in all things light truck automotive.
Yeah, it looks like we're probably going to be seeing Tesla sales down around 9 to 10% in 2025. Again, we don't have the complete number out right
Yeah.
now, but we also see some interesting headwinds for them in some markets because it looks like the pop-out door handles are going to need a serious redesign because of some
Mhm.
Chinese legislation that has not changed. It's definitely going to be enforced, it looks like. And it
Yeah.
looks like in the United States, the government here may actually also have something to say about those powered door handle designs. It's not going to affect just Tesla. It's going to affect a large number of companies, and not just EVs either, because this trend towards electronic door releases has grown.
Especially in the luxury segment.
Hmm.
I'm curious if it's going to be a effective from now on, or if it's going to be a retrofit thing.
Yeah,
I don't know how difficult. I mean, in theory, it shouldn't be that difficult, but the vehicle is not designed to put another
right.
mechanism in, and how much that would end up costing you. Some people will say it's worth saving your
Hmm.
life, and that's a fair argument. But I'm also looking at a company like Tesla saying, "Oh, they need to do a massive, maybe it's not a recall, but a massive, remanufacturing of the new part to put in a bunch of cars." That's not going to happen quickly if it does come to pass.
Yeah, it. I would assume it could be a simple mechanical replacement of the door handle, a redesign of that entire door lock mechanism, but could fit within the same
Space.
manual pop out handle
Sounds.
designs that we
Yeah.
find in Model 3 and Model Y, for instance. I think that more of a problem would actually be some of the other car brands that have the electric, they pop, they zoop out of the car, et cetera. How are
Mm,
you going to redesign that easily? You just have
with
to
a
change
manual
sheet metal probably
component.
with them just popping out all the time.
Yeah.
For those that aren't familiar with the problem, the origin story of this problem is the ability to get out of the vehicle in an emergency from the inside or the outside. Apparently, some vehicles, and I may be getting this wrong, so apologies in advance, but it is my understanding that the complaint has been that in the loss of a total electrical loss in some of these vehicles, there's no way to extricate people from the outside of the rear doors in some of these vehicles,
Hmm.
or especially if you have kids, especially in child seats in the back. You're not going to be able to get the kid to be able to actuate a manual door lock release that's hidden somewhere that's not right there where the regular physical release is. I mean, a kid in a rear-facing child seat's not going to be able to get there anyway. So you're
They're stuck.
relying on someone outside of the vehicle to actually be able to get them out. Of course, you're
Mhm.
also relying on the doors to be unlocked and all of that jazz. But that apparently has been the origin story of the problem. And in China, I guess the legislation is also focusing on the location of some of these manual releases that are not intuitive in some vehicles. In some Teslas, I think they're actually fine, where the lever is actually kind of right on top.
Right by
But
the door. Yeah.
yeah, right there by the door handle. It's not the one you're supposed to use, but a lot of people use them, right? But it's the cars where that door release, like in Corvettes, et cetera, is like a little red pull somewhere way down the door that you aren't always using, so you don't have the muscle memory in an accident. I do kind of wonder though, where was the customer research that said customers said, you know what I really want is a button instead of a door lever?
I I don't know, but I'll be the first to say that there are a number of these designs with a button that I really enjoy. I don't think the lever's ever been an issue, right?
Mm,
But there is sort of a premium feel where you don't have to do it, it's done for you. And that's
mm,
why we see it in EVs because of this flush door handle thing,
yeah.
but you see it in the luxury segment because it feels good. And there are some of these mechanisms that do feel really good without you having to do anything. I know we're talking
Mhm.
fractions of a calorie to make that motion. But again, it's an experiential thing.
It's it's funny because I don't think I like the feel of any of them, and this is not a Tesla thing. I mean, GM's had electric door releases in some of their vehicles like ELR and Corvettes and things like that for quite some time. If my memory serves, actually a decent time longer than Tesla, and I didn't like those either. Just something awkward. Teslas actually do this better, but there's something awkward about some of them where if you are pushing the button as you're pushing on the door, like you think you should be able to, there's this like oops, not yet, and then the door
Yeah.
kind of opens. And Teslas are not that's not the way they operate. They have a much more immediate action,
Mhm.
but a lot of vehicles don't. And
Yeah.
some manufacturers have tried to spin this as, well, we're adding extra safety features. That was
Mhm.
Lexus's deal in RX. They're saying, well, if we want the ability to lock out the door action if there's
Mhm.
traffic coming or a bicycle coming or something's there, a blind
You
spot
got to have time to
system.
check it.
Well, but right, you have to have an electronic door release because there's no other way for this system to function.
Mhm.
Um, I would argue that if you have the double pull style mechanism, that maybe the answer is in this moment where you're starting to pull on the door handle, if that situation exists, then you lock the door and then you
Mm.
got to do a double pull to then override that blind spot monitoring situation. There's
Right.
got to be some way to fix that and still have a mechanical release because I mean, it's there's no tragedy greater than having a child die, right? And for the
Yeah.
people that have sued where their Tesla locked their children in the back and then there was no power to actuate the door handle and then the child dies, like that's definitely a problem. Will this solve the problem? I don't know.
Yeah, and I won't be the one to say, "Oh, it's a small number, it doesn't matter." But there are pieces of this where a manufacturing design could have been safer, or
Mhm.
and it's a one-off scenario that's to my knowledge, I've glanced over some of these, and
Mhm.
worldwide it sounds like maybe a couple dozen incidents, which by percentage is an
Mhm.
incredibly small number. Um, but if we found that it's an issue, then how
Mhm.
do we address the issue? And I don't think it's worth. It feels a little bit better to sacrifice a life. I'm never going to make that
Yeah.
claim or that argument.
What we
It's,
don't know
but it's an interesting one.
what we don't know in a way is the number statistically significant in that regular car, regular old door handle, but door's locked, and then you don't have 12-volt power. You still can't get into the door because it's locked, right?
Right,
And
because
there's
it's still an
no
electronic lock, which is
still an electric
every
lock
door.
or
Yeah,
a mechanical lock even for cars that have mechanical locks, right? So it's
right,
still
from
a
the outside.
lock, right? And it's a rear door, so there's not going to be a key cylinder for you to unlock it. Even in an old car, there wouldn't be. So that's
Right.
kind of my curiosity, and I
It's a
don't know the
smash
answer.
window will lift the lever, but
Right,
even that old gesture, there are people who
right.
might be listening to this who don't know what I'm talking about because it's a
Yes.
little switch
And
down
that
in the
is
door.
a part of this in a way. It is still gonna be harder with the electronic door release because in a regular mechanical mechanism vehicle, you could smash the window, and assuming that you could reach in and grab the lever, you could open the door, and then you could extricate a child seat or an adult or whatever you needed to out of the back, and that is gonna be tricky if you have to smash the window and try and get that person out of the window because the mechanism is still electronic, and you've smashed
Mhm.
the window, but you can't get the person out of the car.
Right, and in case of a fire, and we're talking an engulfing fire, you've got 20-30 seconds
Yeah.
anyway, which is
Seconds
which
count.
is gonna
Mhm.
be which is gonna be hard to, even in a
Right.
panic, get a regular door open, get your child
Right.
unbuckled, and get them out of there.
Right. And not slice them open on the broken glass and then,
Right.
have them bleed out in your hands because that would be even worse.
Yeah.
And, it's like it takes me longer than that to get my daughter in and out of a child seat. In an absolute panic and rush where I I could where somehow I wasn't concerned
Not
about the
happening.
additional harm that she might get, like hitting her head or whatever, breaking a neck or an arm or something, like, even in that, I don't think there's enough time to somehow get her out through the window. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong there, but does not
Yeah.
seem rational.
And there's always a world where, because it hasn't happened in mass doesn't mean it wasn't always possible.
Mhm,
And I'm not really gonna go down this path, but, like, there are designs out there that are known to be dangerous that just haven't caused problems yet,
mhm.
or the manufacturer's taken a gamble and gotten lucky. If it's coming up, let's take a look at it, but again, not arguing against it, but this is going to, in theory, add cost to manufacturing, at least in the short term, because someone's going to have to change something up, and that probably ends up the consumer paying for it. I'll,
Yeah,
I'll pay the extra.
yeah.
I don't mind.
I
That's
mean,
that's fine. But
it'll be a design R&D cost, but
mhm.
true manufacturing, it should be less
No, it should be
expensive.
the same.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I just mean a short
yeah,
term. Hey, we've got to put
maybe.
this thing in, and I think what we'll see, at least again in the short term, our
Mhm.
biggest complaint over the next 4 years will be that Tesla door handles feel really flimsy now, because they didn't redesign the whole thing. They said, "Hey, here's a stopgap measure." It won't just be Tesla.
Yeah.
It'll be the same mechanism, just mechanical, not electric. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what they do because we're going to know real soon. China's rules are implementing very fast, and so
Now.
we will know in relatively short order. Well,
Yep.
with that out of the way, it is time for us to sign off and wish everybody happy New Year. So thanks for
Mhm.
watching. We may be on a bit of a hiatus because I will be out for a little over a week here soon,
And
but
I
we
have
will
very
catch
few
you.
days at home myself, so
Yeah, but we will catch you all at the end of January if we don't catch you beforehand. See everybody later.